Good morning. Welcome to St. Mike's. It's good to have our guests here. Welcome. So some of you may have seen this. The BBC came out with a study this past week that I thought was really interesting. They apparently cataloged the average number of words that men say every day and the average number of words that women say every day. Anybody want to take a gander at the average number of words a man says every day? It's 5,000. So the average man says on average about 5,000 words every day. Anybody want to take a gander at the average number for women? 25,000. Okay, I'm not making this up, all right? In their defense, they said that the ladies were directing most of their words towards their children, though they did not say what type of words towards their children. One never knows, right? Makes me think of this one couple that I'm very close with. When I get a text from her, it's like 5 paragraphs with 65 emojicons and exclamation point, exclamation point. I get a text from him and it's like, dude, that's it. One word, that's it. In case you have not noticed, I know this will come as a shocker, men and women communicate differently. Okay, we do. It's really interesting how we handle stress differently, how we parent differently, how we handle problems differently. We just do. This is what we would call the complementarity of the sexes. We have 2 different ways of approaching things. And the saints have a very useful phrase, I think, that is worth sharing. They call it the peace that comes with like this passivity or indifference, they would say. The peace of indifference. It doesn't mean by indifference we're not talking that we don't care. We're talking that we care so much to not inject our big nose into a situation. Why is that important for families? I'll tell you. Because if we do have 2 different ways of communicating, then that means, of course, that I don't always have to be right. I don't always have to be right. Some people care more about being right than getting it right. I have to be right, and I have to have that person in my family know that I'm right, because I'm right. Okay, does it really matter? Probably not. Still other people, you ever know these people, if they think it, they speak it. Father, I don't have a filter. I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, well, you know what? Here's the deal. You are responsible for what comes out of your mouth. It's just that simple. You may not have a filter, but that's how it works. So sometimes we may think it, but it doesn't mean we have to say it. And these are obvious points, but if the saints are right, I happen to believe they are, what that means is, of course, that I don't need to inject myself into it, because when we have this kind of peace that they're talking about, right, of not having to inject myself into it, we're going to have more energy for ourselves, more energy for our family, for our marriage, and of course, for God. It's a really important point. You know, there's this beautiful, beautiful scene that we hear, and I love this scene in John chapter 21, where Jesus has just been resurrected, and he's walking along the Sea of Galilee with our first pope. Who is our first pope? Peter. And then about 20 yards behind him, of course, is the Apostle John. So John lets Peter and Jesus talk. When the Pope and Jesus is talking, you don't interrupt. So they're over there talking, and Jesus tells Peter how he's going to die. How did Peter die? He's crucified upside down on Vatican Hill in Rome. So he tells him this. And so he's telling him this, and Peter looks at John and he says, well, what about him? And she's like, don't worry about him. Maybe we could say this in 4 words. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, Peter. He says, what if I want him to stay until I come back again? What business is that? You follow me, buddy. So this is what we're talking about, is that there's a peace that comes with not having to inject ourselves in other people's lives. Because frankly, we're going to make it worse usually, not better. I remember years ago we were building this building over here, this office building, and I was talking to the interior decorator one day, and she brings all these colors, all these different schemes for the carpet. What color do you want? What carpet do you want? She had stacks and stacks of these things for me to go through. And I'll be honest with you, I must have a look of total horror on my face, because I finally just stopped and said, ma'am, can you just decide? Can you just make the decision? She laughed and she said, I love working with men. She said, you guys are so easy. But for me, I was like, common sense is what she does for a living. So it's like, what would happen if we micromanaged the lives of other people? She's good at what she does. Let's let her do what she does. She did a great job. And it's the same thing for each one of us. When we try to stick our hands in things, it gets worse, usually not better, because they have to live their lives. We stay in our lane. I don't necessarily agree with how you're parenting your children, but I don't get a vote. That's on you. When a priest washes his hands here at Mass, have you ever noticed this? And when a priest washes his hands, he's quoting Psalm 51, Lord, wash away my iniquities and cleanse me of all my sins. So one of the prayers that I'm praying in my life, in my mind, is, Lord, you know what? I don't get a vote. I have my thoughts, I have my suggestions, but ultimately the people have to choose the life. They have to own it. And that way, we have a lot more energy for ourselves, for our marriage, for our children, and for God alone. Yeah? 16th century, St. Ignatius of Loyola. What community did St. Ignatius start? Anybody know? The Jesuits, right? My cousin was a Jesuit for about 50 years. So in his spiritual exercises, St. Ignatius, he talks about this, the spirituality or the peace that comes with indifference. By indifference, we're not talking about that we don't care. We're saying that we care so much, I'm not going to inject myself in someone else's life. And when we do that, what happens is we free ourselves from what other people think of us. If they don't like me, if they do like me, okay, whatever. Okay, it's fine. Because I'm not here for that reason. There's a peace that comes with that. That's what he's talking about. I think he's really onto something. We stay in our lane, yeah? It's a random question, so play along with me. I don't know how many of you guys have ever been to the Appalachian Trail in East Tennessee. I used to love going to hike there. And let's assume that you and I were hiking on the AT, on the Appalachian Trail, and somehow we got separated. And we were lost in the woods. Could you live for, say, 3 or 4 days without food or water or shelter? Would you know how to survive? I mean, be honest. If I had my cigars, I would be fine. Although with my luck, there would be no lighter, so one never knows. I mean, how would you do? Lost in the woods. I mean, by the way, this has happened to me on a hiking trip. And so what happens is, in these situations, if you've ever had that happen, or you lose a child in a grocery store, you start going into panic, right? And that word panic comes from the Greek god Pan, who's a nymph, and he used to scare people, jump out from behind the bushes and scare people. And that's where the word panic comes from. So some people, they can think clearly in those situations. Other people melt. They melt completely mentally. They just can't function. There's a big word. Don't get freaked out by the big word. There's a phrase called situational agility. Situational agility, aka heuristics. What that means is some people can size up a situation and instantaneously attack. They just got it, man. Other people, they cannot think clearly. I mean, everybody here, you know what I'm talking about. Your teenage daughter brings home a new boyfriend. Instantaneously, you're sizing him up. Oh, no. You have a new applicant for a position at your work, sizing that person up. Ladies, you're on an airplane. The guy sitting next to you starts a conversation. Okay, is he just a nice guy, or is he hitting on me? Sizing him up, right? Where are you going with this, Father? Here's where I'm going with this. There are times that we can rely on our own ability to size up a situation, but let's be honest. There are times that we are lost in the woods. Lord, I have no idea what to do in this situation. I got nothing. I'm lost. All right? And so what happens? We take our hands off of it in the peace of indifference. Lord, this is what I would like to happen, but you know better than I do. And so I'm going to take my hands off of it. But you know what happens? You know what I see? Is that people will give things to God, and then about 6 hours later or 2 days later, they, thank you very much, I'll take that back. God's like, okay. They give it to God. About 2 days later, I'll take it back. They can't figure out why they're still struggling with this. The peace of indifference. I give it to you, Lord, because I'm lost in the woods. I'll close with this. Did you know as Catholics, according to Catholic theology, we understand the word God as a verb, not a noun. I'm going to say that again. Catholics understand the word God not as a noun, but a verb. If you ask people, like, who is God? They think, well, God's, I don't know, it's this guy that looks like Santa Claus, he lives in the clouds, right? They really think that's like God. For us, according to Catholic theology, God is a verb. He's active. In Latin, they would say, ipsum esse in subsistence. What does that mean? It means God is pure act. He hit the first domino of this whole universe, set the whole thing in play. Thomas Aquinas would say he's pure act. Sounds nice, Father. What does that mean? This is why this is important to what I'm talking about. Okay? God knows what he's doing. He's got a little experience. All right? So my humble suggestion to all of us, let God be God. He knows what he's doing. We give it to him and say, Lord, clearly you have the experience to solve this problem. So I'm just going to give it to you, and I'm going to do my best to not take it back. And he'll do it. It may not be according to our timeline, but I can guarantee you he will. When we try to inject ourselves into a situation, we often make it worse, not better. And when we develop the peace of indifference, we say, Lord, this is my preference. You said ask, and I'm asking. But you know what? At the end of the day, you know what's better. And he does.